2, 1. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Mic Drops with yours truly, Elwin Green. Are Kamala Harris and the Democrats preparing to stop the steal? Within 24 hours after the election was called, Kamala Harris did what every losing presidential candidate but one has done in the past. She conceded. Now, a week after the election, there's a hint that the fight might not be over, that Kamala Harris and her team might be preparing to move it to a different arena. Here's the story. Harris' fundraising page says a portion of donations will be directed to recount effort. A portion of donations made to the Harris Victory Fund, a joint fundraising committee authorized by the Harris campaign, the Democratic National Committee, and state Democratic parties, will be directed towards a recount effort, according to its fundraising page. The move comes after former President Donald Trump officially swept all 7 battleground states and earned 312 electoral votes in the 2020 presidential race, winning control of the White House. The fundraising page says that the first 41,000/15,000 from a person/multi-candidate committee, PAC, will be allocated to the DNC. The next 3,300 or 5,000 from a person or PAC will be allocated to Harris for President's recount account. So there it is, the first hint that they may be moving the battle or the fight to a new arena. Why would they do such a thing? Well, the Twitterverse, if no other place, is alight with a number of reasons why that might be the case. I'm going to share just a couple of numbers with you to start. The first reason that a lot of people see to call for a recount is that it simply seems fishy, suspicious, that Harris lost 10 million votes in this election. Not that she lost to Trump by 10 million votes, but that she lost 10 million votes from the votes that Joe Biden gained in 2020. Trump got about the same number of votes as he did in the last go-round. In 2020, he received 74,223, 975 votes, say 74,000. This time around, he got roughly, I'm saying 1,000 when I mean millions, obviously. Say 74 million. This time around, he got roughly 75 million. But in 2020, Joe Biden got more than 81 million votes, and Kamala Harris received less than 72 million, more than a 9 million vote difference. Given everything that we saw after Joe Biden pulled out of the race and endorsed Kamala Harris as his successor candidate, the support that Harris was able to garner immediately from a wide range of the voting public, including some who were initially hesitant about coming on board over time, who did come on board. Just the numbers, right? The numbers of people who kept showing up, the enthusiasm that was being generated, the size of her rallies, all of these things created a vibe, if you will, a perception that makes it hard to believe that it created the perception that she had the kind of support that would make it impossible, actually, for her to lose 10 million votes, 9 or 10 million votes from the turnout for Joe Biden. Something just seems off to a lot of people with that number. So that's the first thing that makes some people think that it would be a good idea to have a recount of the election this time around. The second thing is the fact that, according to the count so far, Donald Trump won 7 out of 7 swing states. Not 5 out of 7, not 6 out of 7, but 7 out of 7. That seems odd. That is not something that anyone would expect. They are called swing states for a reason, right? And yet this time in 2016, Trump won 6 of the 7, I believe it was. And then Biden won 6 of the 7 in 2020, right? The numbers were exactly reversed in those 2 elections. And now this time around, Donald Trump wins all 7 of 7. To some people, that seems fishy. And part of what makes it even seem fishier than just that number by itself is the breakdown of what happened in some of the states that were swing states, because in 5 of the swing states, Democrats were elected in significant down ballot elections. Well, let's take a quick look here. There were 4 senatorial elections in which Democrats won. Okay. In Arizona, Democrat Ruben Gallego, I hope I'm getting it right. If I'm not, please forgive me, sir. In, let's see, this was it Michigan? Yes, in Michigan, Democrat Elissa Slotkin won. In Nevada, Jackie Rosen, Democrat, won. And in Wisconsin, Democrat Tammy Baldwin won. All right. So in all of those cases, Democrats won in down ballot elections, and not elections like a dog catcher, but significant elections for the Senate. And finally, in North Carolina, for the governor's office, voters elected a Democrat rather than the Republican who was running. It's unusual for people to vote one way for president and then vote differently for the Senate or for a governor. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's election fraud going on. It just means that something really unusual happened that may be worth taking a look at. And especially I want to highlight the case of the governorship in North Carolina, because in North Carolina, Josh Stein received more votes for the governorship than Kamala Harris is recorded as having received for the presidency. How often do people vote for a governor without voting for the president? Like the people who voted for the governor didn't vote for a president at all? Are we going to believe that that's the case? We're not even saying, or the numbers don't even indicate that, for instance, the people who voted for Stein would have voted for Trump. Something seems off here. A lot of people are saying something seems off here. So that's the third reason that some people are calling for a calling for a recount, saying that we definitely need to have one. Number one, it seems odd that Harris completely lost 10 million of Biden's votes, 9 or 10 million of Biden. And number two, it seems odd that that Trump won 7 out of 7 swing states. Number three, it seems odd that the votes was kind of split in some of these 5 of these states, that they voted for a Republican for president, but then voted for a Democrat for senator or for governor. And so all of those things just look odd. And another reason that people want to have a recount done is because there were bomb threats at multiple polling locations around the country, the vast majority of them being in Philadelphia and in Atlanta. Okay. And we don't know that those bomb threats made a difference in the vote, but the possibility that they may have made a difference simply may be worth investigating or may be worth pursuing to some degree, especially since they overwhelmingly targeted Democrat-leaning counties. Nearly 70 bomb threats were called in. In the end, the FBI determined them to not be credible, but they still could have spooked some people at the time that they were called in, and they may have had an impact. And the vast majority were in Fulton County, Georgia, Atlanta, and in Philadelphia. And the FBI said that there might be a connection with Russian operatives. So all of that is just suspicious and fishy and maybe worthy of further investigation. All right. The next reason that is being cited by a lot of folks around the country is the idea that Elon Musk's company, or Elon Musk's satellite system, Starlink, was employed to help count votes in some areas. That Starlink satellites were connected to some of the voting machines. I am pleased to be able to report that this has been shown to simply be false. Okay, so this one we can check off the list, at least according to the Poynter Institute's website, PolitiFact. All right, so let's wipe that one off the board. That brings me to the final reason for calling for a recount, which I believe has not received nearly as much attention as it deserves. And that reason doesn't have to do with any specific numbers or with satellites. It has to do with Donald Trump himself. It has to do with who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump cheats. Some instances of Donald Trump cheating. Donald Trump University, anybody remember that? The so-called real estate school that turned out to be a fraud. He was sued for fraud, and he wound up doing a settlement while not claiming responsibility, because claiming responsibility is what Donald Trump studiously avoids doing. Wound up doing a settlement for $25 million in that case. Then we had the case of the Trump Foundation. Don't know how many folks even remember the Trump Foundation. The Trump Foundation, I believe, was supposedly raising money to help kids with kidney problems. And they took the money and did all sorts of other things with it, and wound up having to admit that they had committed fraud, that they had misused the money, and paid out $2 million to legitimate charities as their fine for abusing their own foundation. Who uses a nonprofit to commit fraud? Simple answer, someone who is a cheat to their core. Another quick example would be the case that was won by New York Attorney General just earlier this year, 8 or 9 months ago, against Donald Trump, his children, and his company, the Trump Organization, in which they were found liable for fraud and fined $364 million, a number that has since grown to about $450 million. Trump is, of course, still appealing, but the fact is that he and his company and his children were found liable, which is the civil suit's equivalent of guilty in a criminal case. Guilty, liable of fraud. Donald Trump cheats. Is what he does, is who he is. It is so much what he does and who he is that Donald Trump gets other people to cheat. People who might have been good people before they encountered Donald Trump fall under his influence and are led to do bad things. Ask Jenna Ellis, who as a young attorney hoped to use her legal career to flesh out her Christian morals, fell into Trump's circle, well, and fell. Wound up pleading guilty in the Georgia election interference case. Donald Trump cheats. Donald Trump influences other people to cheat. And admit that Donald Trump has cultivated a culture of cheating within the GOP, has influenced other people, random Republicans across the country, to believe that it's okay to cheat. With all of the noise that Donald Trump and the Republicans has made for the past 8 years about election fraud or voter fraud, every actual case that I have come across, and they have, first of all, been few, and second of all, have been scattered, not indicating any kind of grand conspiracy. But every single one that I have come across or heard about has been committed by a Republican. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, after his election loss in 2020, became the first and only candidate so far to not concede. Rather than conceding, he protested, as he has the right to do, by taking the matter to court. Most of us are aware of how everything turned out at the end with January 6th. But a lot of people don't realize that prior to January 6th, he actually took the legal route of going to court, filing a lawsuit to try to get the results overturned. And he lost. And he tried again. And he lost. And he went to court a third time to try to overturn the results of the election. And he lost. And a fourth time, and a fifth time, and a sixth time. And I give Donald Trump credit for the virtue of persistence. You or I would likely have given up, if not after the first effort, then after the second or third, or the fifth or the sixth. Donald Trump and his people went to court 61 times to try to overturn the results of the 2020 election, and they were 0 for 61. Given that Donald Trump and his people went to court 61 times to question, to challenge the 2020 election, and given that Donald Trump himself is a congenital cheat, liar, and fraudster. Kamala Harris and the Democrats might do well to indeed at least investigate the possibility of election fraud. It certainly looks as if they believe that it would be worth the trouble, that they're beginning the process. And here's the thing. If Kamala Harris does take the matter to court, she will be on her home turf. She has spent her adult life gathering evidence for and prosecuting cases. He won't go 0 for 61. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned.